top 4 draft, #1 seeded team, and he is going to be picking up his pack shortly. This might be where we see some slightly more esoteric synergies, shall we say, maybe doing clever things with treasure in order to fix mana to be able to play whatever powerful cards you take, even if you're not locked in on a sleek, aggressive 2-color deck, which is pretty much what we've seen from Ixalan all weekend long thus far.
Yeah, if you guys were tuning in over the weekend, you'll notice that all of the deck's power levels were very, very high. Unlikely we're going to see multiple Territory or Hammer Skulls. We're going to see multiple Shapers of Nature. That just doesn't really happen in a team draft setting where people will hate draft very, very highly.
All right, so Kenji, this first pack opening up, no obvious bomb here as I see it. What cards are standing out to you?
Yeah, Fathomfleet Firebrand is just a premium 2-drop in the red deck. If you want to go more of the Merfolk route, we see the Water Trap Weaver and the Deep Root Champion. Kitesail Freebooter are also a fine pirate pick. Looks like Corey has the 2 red cards picked up here. And yeah, that just goes to tell you how fast this format is. He's taking a 2/2 for 2.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the various ways that you can leave the other team in a rough spot is to make it so that they get a shortage of key points on their mana curve. If you don't have enough 2-drops, then you are going to get run over by the other side of things. And Corey Burkhart here prioritizing a 2-drop that is very potent in the early game, but actually does quite a bit in the late game too with that pump. So here, there are a couple of things to consider, I guess. First up, let's have a look at what's gone. Is it a rare? Is it something that we can perhaps plan around a little bit more? And then, of course, it's what do I take? What am I passing?
Yeah, it looks like the rare is actually missing out of this pack. Corey does have some fine options. Shoshana's Wayfinder, a pretty good 3-drop, of course, with Explorer. Doesn't necessarily have good synergies with the Fathomfleet Firebrand that he first picked. I doubt he's going to want to take something like, you know, the Nest Robber, even though it's on color and another 2-drop. It's just not the same power level.
Passing a Pounce there, that'll be a card that Corey Burkhart will be keeping in mind that he might need to think about. There's sometimes some interesting dynamics in Team Draft where you see multiple cards that are powerful in the same color. You can take one of them, give a sort of false signal to the person to your left, and then cut them off on that color, potentially. Now, if it works out that Corey's in Dinosaurs here, he's got a number of interesting choices between, also a number of good choices if he's in Merfolk. 2 more potent 2-drops with Merfolk Branchwalker and Deep Root Warrior. And then it looks like he's gone for the Branchwalker. Lots of Explore. I like that. It means that he's going to be able to consistently hit his land drops, potentially even just make an aggressive curve where he gets to even cut a land, knowing that if he hits his 2, he's going to find that 3rd land a little bit more easily. Yeah, a Tepecon Master is the premium 2-drop basically in the Dinosaur deck, but that goes in a very, you know, dinosaur-heavy deck, whereas the Merfolk Branchwalker is just a great green creature in no matter what deck you're going to play. It's just one of the best 2-drops out there. Well, Glorifier of Dusk, if you're looking for a signal to maybe pick an extra color, this is it. It's a 4/4 for 5 mana that has the potential to do its best Serra Angel impression, pay 2 life to give it Vigilance, pay 2 life to give it Flying at a moment's notice, and that is what Corey Burkhart goes for. He sees a little signal, he goes for it, and now we'll find out whether or not, in fact, the Peach Garden Oath have sent a signal which they now intend on cutting off.
Yeah, not very surprising to see him take the, what I like to call the Serra Vampire here. It's just the most powerful card in the pack, and like you said, there's just not much for him given what he's already taken, and that could be a good sign that maybe the Vampires deck, or just white in general, is open.
Pterodon Knight's a nice one if it works out that there are appropriate dinosaurs to go with the white 3/3 for 4. Alternatively, Queen's Commission in white looking fairly good. Or indeed the Explore of Ixali's Diviner, all options if he wants to stay in the colors he's in. Any cards that you would be looking to hate in this pack?
Nothing really to hate. I mean, the power level is just not there. The Pterodon Knight could be the good card for his deck. Another card I would, well, I want him to take, but I know is not necessarily great, is the Revel in Riches, but we'll have to see if somebody takes advantage of those treasures later.
I mean, the interesting thing in a team draft as well, 6 players, which means that the cards wheel around a little bit more.
Yes.
So the person that opened that Revel in Riches potentially has 3 shots at taking it. Bellowing Aegisaur, a big dino that will work very nicely with Pterodon Knight. Obviously a little bit more expensive. Slash of Talon's a trick that Corey Burkhart, he can either take, or he can just remember that it's in the draft, and it gives him a little bit more information to play around with.
Yeah, it looks like he's looking at the lower drop cards here. He's not even going to pay attention to the Aegisaur. I think it might be a little bit too expensive. You saw him have the Scout there pulled up to the front, just one of the premium 2-drop black cards that can also explore.
A Blossom Dryad ultimately the pick, so that will mean that accelerating to more expensive threats just a little bit easier. And this is his pack back. So 6 cards gone. He sees Storm Sculptor still there. Spike-tailed Ceratops around. If he wants to get a white flyer, he has an option at that also. This is the point where he starts to get a feel for what other people at the table might really be doing.
Right, and Skyblade of the Legion, looks like he's going to take that here. It's actually a pretty decent 2-drop. You obviously have the Vampire synergies that you can pick up later on, but even in a red-white or a red-green deck, if he's going to go that route, it just blocks a lot of the creatures early and can get in some few points of damage there later on.
Worth noting that not really seen too much in the way of red cards after first picking a red 2-drop, so Corey Burkhart rolling with the punches a little bit here. Sees a Cobbled Wings and goes for that one, valuing evasion over bodies right now. I guess that tribal sets tend to have a lot of creatures that he can fill up on later.
Yeah, it looks like the rare was actually still in that pack. I missed that. I thought that was the Dusk Legion Dreadnought, but it actually was the Shadowed Caravel, so the rare was still in that second pack that he got past.
A quick Legion's Judgment being considered here by Burkhart. He does take it. This first pack, in some respects, the one where we'll see the most movement of players as they try and figure out which colors might work for them. Another Pterodon Knight here. That's a potentially nice pickup for Burkhart.
Wow, really great pickup there, as most of the other cards are just filler. There's the Queen's Bay Soldier, of course, but that's just a 2/2 bear filler in the Vampire deck.
It's going to be interesting to see how things go in terms of pack 2. Once you're a little bit more solidly in your colors, that Revel in Riches is doing the laps, demystify the pickup for Burkhart here. In pack 2, will we see Corey Burkhart having to take cards that are powerful but clearly not things that he's going to be able to play if he's worried about his teammates getting them? And still passing up on that Belling Regisaur, instead looking to get Slash of Talons, have the combat tricks, let himself be low to the ground and aggressive rather than potentially have cards languishing in his hand.
Yeah, and even though he has multiple Pterodon Knights now, I kind of like the pickup of Slash as, again, there are just so many premium 2-drops in this format that you want to be able to deal with, and having a cheap trick like Slash of Talons is quite nice.
No surrender from Corey Burkhart as he finishes up his first pack. And green-white looking to be where he's at. That essentially are the dinosaur set of colors, but not worth worrying too much about creature types on all of his cards. The Pterodon Knights obviously would love to have dinosaurs alongside them, but actually he's largely just gone for card quality. And if it works out that he gets some synergies, at least for now, he's not as worried about just simply hitting a good curve and being able to get things going.
Yeah, not taking that Aegisaur when he had the chance might come up back to bite him, as he only has that Spike-tailed Ceratops to turn on the Pterodon Knights right now. But, you know, there's still 2 more packs to go, and if he can maybe even pick up some Territorial Hammer Skulls, I think he'll be really, really happy with the way the draft's gone. But
not seen very much red, not seen anything exciting in black at any point, has seen a few blue cards moving around the table a little bit. So at this point, in addition to thinking about the cards that he's got in his hands right now, Corey Burkhart, I'm sure, considering what's going on around him and what cards he might reasonably expect to get past, or that he might really not want to pass to the player on his right.
Yeah, I think the only notable color that he might have seen was blue. We saw a few late tricks as well as One with the Wind, and I think a lot of people are coming around to One with the Wind as just a nice way for the blue deck, especially if you go Merfolk, to get in those early points of damage and end the game really quickly. You noted that Storm Sculptor that was also going around. I don't think you want to take those too highly, as generally you're not going to want to run more than 1 or 2, but just something to note.
And it means that sort of when thinking about those colors, Corey can consider which cards he feels more comfortable passing on, because if he can get them past an opponent and onto a teammate, that can be great.
And wow, Drover of the Mighty is just one of the best green 2-drops in this format, especially when he has multiple Pterodon Knights already. Now, obviously, that doesn't pump up the Pterodon Knights, but that's just going to incentivize him to take dinosaurs heavier.
The other cool thing, of course, with Drover of the Mighty, tapping for mana of any color. If it works out that at some point Corey Burkhart is taking a card essentially as a hate draft, he may still just be able to splash it.
Sure.
Drover the Mighty, one of the variety of ways that splashing becomes realistic. Of course, there's also all of the treasure in the format. This is going to be a really interesting set, I think, specifically for Team Draft.
Yeah, I think the Fire Cannon Blast here is the most notable card that he's going to have to remember passing in the second pack. He'll have to, you know, talk with his teammates after the draft is finished. Hey, do you see in pack 2 that Fire Cannon Blast? I passed it second.
Alrighty, looks like already a big flying Shining Aerosaur being picked out by Corey Burkhart here. He sees a Crushing Canopy. That'll be something that he wants to keep in mind. Basically, keeping in mind instance and removal in general, in addition to, of course, any bombs that you see. They're the kind of priority things to figure out where they've ended up at the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he's obviously going to take the Shining Aerosaur here, but he's going to look through the pack and make sure he notes any important cards. There was a Spell Swindle there, that Crushing Canopy you were talking about, Chupacabra, a few cards that, if his teammates don't see them later on, something to note as well.
Yeah, and these a whole set of skills that test the memory in a way that you may not get from practicing on, say, Magic Online. This is very much a sort of real-life Magic. If you're drafting against 6, 7 other players, 5 other players in a team draft, this is where you hone this sense of memory of what you've already drafted, what you've passed, and these players, they'll spend a bit more time looking at the cards that they're passing than maybe you would need to if you were on Magic Online.
Definitely. Shining Aerosaur, just a great one, though. He had the multiple Pterodon Knights. We saw the Drover of the Mighty, the first pick in this particular pack. So things are going well. He's going to want to pick up some more dinosaurs for sure, but he's on the right track.
Well, one way he could find more dinosaurs is by communing for them. Ixali's Keeper, though, a solid enough 2/2. Ashes of the Abhorrent still in the pack, but that one really not worth worrying about. A rare that is, if anything, more about filling in some holes in Constructed than it is doing things in Limited. Bishop Soldier also shuffled to the front of the pack, though.
Yeah, I think Bishop Soldier is the premium white 2-drop. At common anyways. Adonto Vanguard's also a really nice one. I think the Ixali's Keeper is the only other card Corey could consider, but Lifelink is huge in this format. The only notable card, I think, him passing Deadeye Plunderers, he'll have to note for later.
So things kind of settling down a little bit here for Corey. He's in a good spot in as much as he's got a lot of playables, and this seems to be a format where there are a lot of playables.
Oh, baby.
Wow. All right, there are some powerful dinosaurs in this pack. Snapping Sailback, an easier one for him to cast, but there's also, well, anytime you see a big gold uncommon, it's a little bit of a signal, and the Raging Swordtooth is one that he will definitely be paying attention to, because that's the kind of card that in the right deck is formidable, and just as a 5/5 trampler for 5, it will sometimes make life very problematic.
Yeah, I like the take of the Snapping Sailback versus the Raging Swordtooth. I think they're pretty close in power level. The Sailback, though, much easier for him to cast, and, well, it's going to be much more easy to play around, say, a Raging Swordtooth than it is a Snapping Sailback. So he'll note that he passed it, but happily take the 5-drop here.
So Bishop of the Bloodstained, this is an interesting one. This, I think, to me, is the first card that I would be tempted to take, even though I've got no intention of casting it. It looks like Corey still going for the Jade Guardian there, though, but he will very much be considering the fact that if there is a Vampires player, and he's not seen a huge amount of black in pack 1,
no,
that Bishop of the Bloodstained represents a large amount of damage. New Horizons, another card that potentially might mean that splashing is a little easier, but also a Slash of Talons, and we've already seen that Corey Burkhart prioritizing combat tricks.
Yeah, you were just talking about Bishop of the Bloodstained. There's another one here in this pack, as well as an Anointed Deacon, so looks like the Vampire deck might be slightly open. I think Corey probably just takes the New Horizons or the Slash of Talons #2.
I guess that one way of getting past the Bishop of the Bloodstained is just having your opponent so close to dead before it becomes a factor that you can make it all work that way. Another copy of Jade Guardian here. Jade Guardian, an interesting one, because obviously in the Merfolk deck itself, it's super powerful, but it's still just a pretty solid 3-drop in any green deck, and it's a solid 3-drop that also makes the Merfolk deck that much worse by taking it.
Yeah, I don't think he's super thrilled about these Jade Guardians, but like you said, 3/3 hexproof for 4 is definitely fine. He's still looking for those more dinosaur synergy cards, as he has the multiple Pterodon Knights.
I mean, there are other Merfolk in his pool. He's got a few options as to what he wants to pump. Crash of Ramparts here, or Crash the Ramparts, sorry, an interesting option alongside Crushing Canopy. Goes for the combat trick once again, even though the other team will have seen these combat tricks going around the table and may have a bit of a sense of how many tricks there are in Corey's deck. That doesn't diminish their value enough that he's not going to want to take them, and he certainly doesn't want to have his team playing against a deck with all these tricks.
This is nice for Corey. He wheeled the Ixali's Keeper here. That's going to be another decent 2-drop to fill out his green creature curve. And like you said earlier, he does have a few other Merfolk already. The Branchwalker, of course, on 2. The Tashani's Wayfinder on 3. I believe we saw him take as well. So he could be going this weird green-white, maybe Merfolk Dino deck. We'll have to see, though.
Yeah, I think that we're much more likely to see hybridizing, if you will, of the various tribes, making the tribes work together, a sort of an uneasy alliance between tribes, more in this team draft format than we may have seen earlier on in the weekend with the Team Sealed.
And that's totally to be expected. Team Sealed, you get 12 packs. You know, you can put each different tribe into somebody else's hands, but in team draft like this, you want to be able to not only get a good deck, but also hate on an opponent's deck. And I think that New Horizons there was, wow, an amazing wheel for Corey.
Yeah, clutch for Corey, because now with the Drover of the Mighty and New Horizons, if Corey Burkhart opens a Regisaur Alpha,
Sure.
straight in his pile, and he will play it.
Yes.
Very, very easily. And to be perfectly honest, yeah, there are a lot of very, very potent rares or power uncommons that he could open that the door is still open for him to be able to play, even if his main initial concern is just making sure that his opponents don't have them.
And you know what? He's taken 2-drops pretty aggressively, so the fact that he can go 2-drop into New Horizons is definitely a boon. Bishop Soldier would be the premium 2-drop for him to do so, as a 3/3 lifelinker attacking you on turn 3 is quite a big deal. I think he also picked up a Blossom Dryad earlier.
Yes.
Which would also synergize really, really well with the New Horizons, as he's able to New Horizons up one of his lands, add 2 mana of any color, and then he can untap that land with the Blossom Dryad and, again, ramp out some more creatures. Although we don't really see the top end that the green-white deck is usually capable of. Again, this is Team Draft. Like you mentioned, we're going to see that hybridization of decks.
Now, something that's kind of interesting going through this draft, Corey has had 2 shots so far at taking a pounce. In each instance, he's just ended up going with taking another threat. Typically, the removal spell is obviously pretty exciting. It looks like Corey here just wants to have a really consistent deck that will be deploying threats to the board at every stage of the game.
Yeah, green-white usually utilizes its pounces pretty well, but I think in general that card is a little bit overrated. Yes, it's an instant speed, and you can potentially get some nice blowout potential, but frequently, you know, you're not going to be able to profitably cast that card until turn 5, 6, or maybe even later. So I think here he's just opting for the safer cards before taking that pounce.
And the Cobbled Wings early on, also an interesting pick, one that may well end up paying dividends. It does mean that even if you, like, anybody that you draw is going to be one that can potentially close a game out and make life tricky for opponents. As we go into pack 3, one thing that I think that Corey's got going for him is I would say that he's a little ahead of the race to 23 in terms of making sure he has enough playables, and that means that if he does want to snipe a card here or there from his opponent's decks, it's not going to hurt his ability to put together a nice cohesive 40-card limited deck.
Yeah, there just hasn't been too much for him to hate draft in the first place, so he's stuck to his green-white roots and just, you know, drafted the best card for him.
Yeah, I think that the only cards that I'm really keeping in mind and thinking this could work out poorly is the 2 vampires that may end up draining out some number of his team. Vampire Zeal, another nice combat trick available to Corey here, but he's also seeing Colossal Dreadmaw. There's a Contract Killing, there's a Lightning Strike. This is the kind of pack that is a little bit scary. A lot of different ways that his team could be facing a bit of trouble here.
Oh, yeah.
Boneyard Parlay.
Exactly. I was just going to mention that card, Boneyard Parlay, one of the most powerful 7-drop sorceries that you can find. Just one of the best 7-drops in general. Corey's definitely going to note these cards. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he took one of the removal spells or Boneyard Parlay here. Lightning Strike, Contract Killing also in the pack, because the Colossal Dreadmaw, while he does need another fat end card, is sort of replaceable and much less powerful than those Boneyard Parlays and other removal spells.
I mean, I guess that Corey knows that he didn't pass much black in the first pack. So it's possible he may be able to let some of those powerful cards end up in his own team's decks. Meanwhile, he shores up his deck a little bit and just hopes that they can get there on power level. Emissarious Sunrise, a powerful addition to his deck here, and here not quite so many cards that he's going to be afraid of. If he's got another shot at taking a pounce here if he wishes. I really like the Emissary though. 2/1 first strike for 3, not embarrassing even if you just draw a land, and if you explore into a non-land, well, 3/2 first strike is winning most fights.
Yeah, I think the scariest card there is the Fathom Fleet Captain, but he might not even take it. In return, it's just taking that very good playable that you were talking about, the Emissary.
So what I like most about Corey Burkhart's deck is that he is doing a lot of solid proactive things on turns 2 and 3. Oh, we've got a nice one here.
Yeah, that's the perfect pickup for Corey. That Steadfast Armasaur you see in the back of his hand. Although, if he wants to keep his curve low, he already does have a glut of 4-drops. That Raptor Companion does also fit well into his neck.
Yeah, I'm interested to see which one he goes with here, because there's 2 things to consider. There's his own curve, and then there's where these white cards are going to end up if he doesn't take them. I'd probably be inclined to take the Steadfast Armasaur here, even if it makes my curve a tiny bit worse, just so that I know that the Armasaurs on Team Burkhart one way or another.
Right. Armasaur is definitely the more powerful card, and in conjunction with any pump effects or tricks like that can really put a damper in your opponent's attack and offense. But Raptor, again, for curve purposes, could be the pickup. Works really nicely with those Pterodon Knights.
It looks like the draft may have been paused briefly. They may have seen that there was some issue that they just need to deal with. You saw Corey Burkhart there basically making the universal symbol of timeout, just so that we on commentary know what's going on. Steadfast Armasaur, I think, is the pick that I prefer here, but it's really interesting to me. I think that Corey's sending a signal to everyone there figuring out how they want to be drafting this format, that 2-drop's super important if he's considering the Raptor Companion in place of it.
Yeah, we've talked about it time and time again. This format has been much faster than at least our previous one, Hour of Devastation and Amonkhet, and you know, a 2-mana 3/1 that has a relevant creature type, especially in Corey's deck, could be the pickup versus the Armasaur. Again, he's got gluts, a glutted 4-drop slot already, so we'll have to see when they progress. I think overall he's drafted pretty well so far. Again, not too many options to hate draft. We did see the Boneyard Parlay, the Lightning Strike, and the Contract Killing in this particular pack, but he did have a good playable to take.
Yeah, I mean, that pack going to end up kind of interesting. It's going to be one where essentially almost the entire table is going to get a premium pick, and it looks like actually the judge situation that's got things on hold in our feature match areas from our other table. Not quite sure what's going on there. It may be that there's been concerns with you know, a marked card in a pack, something that William Jensen just talking to the head judge now about figuring out. We will be back live with our draft once the judges are able to start calling. One judge calling both of these drafts at the same time. And a little smile there from Corey Burkhart as he looks on at what's going on the other side. It looks like there may be been a card dropped somewhere. I'm sure that these guys will be able to figure it out soon enough and we'll be able to get things going.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how these other players draft and what their decks are going to look like, though.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. Different formats can be more punishing than others in terms of team draft. And I think that the cool thing about this format is the fact that you definitely can build these sort of hybrid tribe decks that are not doing any one thing super well, but still have just solid creatures up and down the curve, and they work out just fine. It's just that you are less likely to be able to be this laser-guided missile just trying to, all right, I'm all in on Merfolk and nothing but, or similar sorts of plays in that stripe.
Yeah, Corey on the half Merfolk, half Dino plan. And honestly, I would imagine a lot of players are going to have those type of decks.
And I think that valuable experience for anyone looking to draft this format, knowing that both of those options are available. That sort of, you don't have to be, I mean, obviously you would love to have the perfect deck. You don't have to aim at getting it literally the Dear Diary deck, if you will, every single time. Sometimes you just need to put together a bunch of powerful cards and get people with them. Looks like we've got ourselves a little card hunt there on the other table. A few extra wires and bits and pieces due to our cameras means it's maybe a little bit fiddlier to find them. It may be that we're able to get a second judge in just so that we can have the drafts called at separate times so that we can have our draft back up and moving even if the other one is experiencing a little bit of a delay here. Slightly unusual circumstance.
Oh, we've seen a lot of good Magic so far this weekend, though.
Looks like we might be able to get up and started again pretty shortly. Back to Corey Burkhart's draft. Fairly straightforwardly green-white. Hasn't really taken any opportunities to do any hate drafting thus far. The big decision that he's currently facing, there's a Steadfast Armasaur in this pack, which I think that you and I agree is the more powerful card.
Absolutely.
But he's considering potentially taking a Raptor Companion in its place. Raptor Companion, the 3/1 for 2, relevant creature type, very relevant cost, and it's just going to be a matter of which way Corey Burkhart wants to wiggle on that.
Well, we'll see in a moment here.
Getting the signal they are just about to get things up and moving. So we will find out soon enough. And It was interesting when we saw the sort of whole feature match area there. It looked to me like the entirety of Corey's team, so Martin User alongside and Andrew Beckstrom, all pretty happy with where they're at. Just sort of, I mean, I guess as much as anything, any time that you're in the top 4 of any event, it's reasonable to have a big old smile on the face. And Corey Burkhart just pointing at the Raptor companion, he was pretty confident on that one. We apologize for the delay, but the suspend counters all over. Raptor companion able to get things up and going once again, and we'll see a fresh pack. A Raptor will follow any order as long as that order is hunt, kill, or go for the guts. Loving some of the flavor text in this set.
Oh, the good news about Raptor companion, Corey's got some combat tricks to buff it up. Crash the ramparts, premium.
Another New Horizons, potentially, if he wants it. Another Blossom Dryad. Sees a couple of removal spells. Swashbuckling. Skullduggery, potentially a potent one. He knows that Pirate's Cutlass will go in literally any deck, so that potentially one that he can take without it hurting his deck too much. Yes, he's a little light on Pirates. However, +2/+1, still relevant for his creatures. Goes for the biggest creature in the pack, and indeed in the set, though. The Brontodon. Ancient it may be, but bigger than everything it also is.
I'm surprised a little bit at that pick. I think the Cutlass or maybe even the Blossom Dryad were fine pickups, as an 8-drop is a little bit hard to hit. Now, he does have a New Horizons, a Blossom Dryad, and at least one Drover of the Mighty, but there were some other good picks there. And
yeah, a bit of a pivot for Corey.
Yeah, for sure.
So here we see Paladin of the Bloodstained out front and center. Sword Point Diplomacy. A rare that not particularly high on too many people's lists of picks. Goes for the straightforward common 3/2 for 4 that creates a 1/1 vampire.
Yeah, no synergy in his deck, but just a solid card overall.
Not too difficult to get a 2 for 1 when your card literally produces 2 permanents. Another Slash of Talons, that kind of an interesting one. Also, I mean, Commune with Dinosaurs, he's not got too much going on turn 1. It sets up his draws, sets up his mana for future turns. Might be an interesting one. And I wouldn't hate a Crushing Canopy somewhere in the draft pile of Corey Burkhart, even if it ends up in the sideboard brought in for games 2 and 3.
Yeah, he's not going to be thrilled about any of these picks. He doesn't have too many dinosaurs for that Commune, although he did just take that Ancient Brontodon. Commune more likely to hit a land in his deck than anything else.
A Vampire Zeal here is a premium combat trick, and we've seen Corey Burkhart going for these throughout the draft, and does put that into his draft pile. Obviously, at its best in Vampires, giving a Vampire first strike in addition to +2/+2, but often +2/+2 plenty in order to win most combats.
I mean, he's got an Exali's Keeper, Raptor Companion, Bishop Soldier, Drover of the Mighty. That's at least 4 2-drops to begin with, so he's going to be aggressive to start and then probably just continue that pressure with combat tricks like that Vampire Zeal.
A second Cobbled Wings. The cool thing about taking Cobbled Wings for Corey Burkhart here is it's a very low-pressure hate draft for him. It could, in principle, send some of his dinosaurs to the air, and that's certainly very potent. But if Corey knows that he's kind of got the monopoly on Cobbled Wings at the table, that means that his team doesn't need to worry about them so much.
All right, another good pack here for Corey. You could take the Ixali's Diviner, just a solid 2-drop, a little bit backwards in his deck. It's not super aggro like he wants to be, but probably better than a second Ancient Brontodon. Yeah,
the Brontodon one is plenty. 9 power and toughness for your mana.
Oh, well, and you know what? He got those green cards back on the wheel, so...
Deadeye Plunderer is still in the pack as well. That one, I mean, gradually you start to get a feel for what other people are up to here. It looks like green has been comparatively open. Another New Horizons. As we know at this point, not crazy amount of splashing going on, but putting a counter on his creatures, relevant. And if it does work out that he wants to do something fruity with one of the non-green white cards, then he certainly has that option.
Well, even better, that second New Horizons is going to help him cast that Ancient Brontodon should he want to still add that to his main deck. And now he has multiple 5-drops to go from turn 3 to 5, basically, with that New Horizons.
Love a Crushing Canopy late on in the draft. Definitely a card to consider bringing in. Does not need a second copy of Demystify. There's an argument to say he doesn't really need a first copy of Demystify. Takes a Sunrise Seeker, and, well, that one's not going to trouble his his deck too much. Bit of life gain, drawing a card. But 15th pick in the draft. All told, I kind of like how Corey Burkhart's decks worked out.